Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Drop, presented by Xfinity. Greg Wyshynski, Arda Öcal. We have made it to the conference finals. We now know it will be the Dallas Stars facing the Edmonton Oilers and the Carolina Hurricanes facing the Florida Panthers, which means, Greg Wyshynski, the Toronto Maple Leafs once again are hitting the links. They are once again on the outside looking in. They are once again heading on vacation in a Caribbean cruise. Maybe it's a Disney cruise this year. Who knows? But once again, they are out of the playoffs, buddy.
Now, do you take any responsibility for this one, Arda? You were the man who drew a map of Toronto and planned a parade after game 2 of the series when Toronto had a 2-0 lead. You were the man who was so confident that he was actually putting little drawings of people watching the cup roll by for the first time since 1967 in Toronto. We often talk about the demons that haunt this franchise. You, sir, are the demon that haunted them this time, don't you think?
I absolutely take 1,000% of the blame. Maple Leafs fans can troll me as much as they want on social media. It has nothing to do with the fact that Florida had a 70-33 edge in shot attempts, including 39-14 in a dominant second period. Absolutely not. It was me drawing Lakeshore and Yonge Street on a piece of paper live on ESPN and a crude stick figure holding an abomination of a looking Stanley Cup drawing because I can't draw any better than my 5-year-old. That's why the Maple Leafs lost this year in the worst Game 7 performance in a string of bad Game 7 performances where they have now lost 7 straight Game 7s, and the last 4 of them, they've only scored 1 goal. It is because Arda Öcal, who was born and raised in Toronto, drew a picture on television. I am the reason the curse continues. I am the reason the curse is still active. And I even froze as I gave that rant wish. That's how cursed Toronto is.
I was shocked they lost as badly as they did in Game 7. If you go back to the recent Game 7 losses, and again, this is their 7th Game 7 loss in a row. Oh my God. You come to find out that the margin of defeat was only like 2 goals, 1 goal, a couple in overtime. Like they didn't play all that badly when it came down to the final stanza of their series. They'd always lose, but they didn't go out like they did this time. I did not think we'd see a repeat of Game 5, but in fact we did. So here's what we need to know about this team right now, Arda. Game 5 plus Game 7 statistically. 0 points from Marner, -4. Matthews, -4. Tavares, -4. Riley, -4. And then the guy who we will put on the pedestal as a true playoff performer for the Toronto Maple Leafs amongst chokers, Willie Nylander, no points, but only a -2. What a warrior. Give that man the Conn Smythe. You cannot win without your best players being at their best in the most critical moments of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Game 5, critical. Game 7, critical. Golf clap to Marner and Matthews for combining for a goal in Game 6 to delay the inevitable. But the series was lost on home ice in 2 opportunities for the Leafs to take control of the series, and in the case of Game 7 and the series. And these guys were pathetically invisible while watching just randos on the Florida Panthers depth chart score critical goals in Game 7. It was such an embarrassment, man. I'm not usually a blow it all up guy, but I don't know how you don't possibly inflict. But and by the way, when I talk about pain, start with Marner. Austin Matthews, candidly, after the game, is like, he's my brother. We love him in the locker room. Good. Feel some pain. Feel some repercussions for your failure, for the whole team's failure. Like when Matthews and Nylander and Riley and all those guys are looking around, where's Marner? Where's Mitch? Well, now we know why. Someone had to pay the price for the Leafs' playoff futility.
Yes, and here's what I'd like to say before we move on to winners and losers wish, piggybacking off of what you just said there. Watching the Toronto Maple Leafs in this Core 4 era has felt like watching the series Dexter. I loved Dexter. Dexter was an awesome show for the first 4 seasons when he was battling with his brother, when he was battling against Dokes, who was onto him as his colleague and coworker. Even the Trinity Killer, John Lithgow.
Trinity
That
Killer.
was a
Love it.
terrific season. Amazing television. Okay. And I'm sorry, I'm freezing again. I'm going to fix my entire setup after this. But the last several seasons of Dexter were a dumpster fire. They absolutely sucked. The problem was I couldn't stop watching Dexter because I needed to know how it ended. And when I saw him look at the camera, spoiler alert, at the very end of the series, and he's a lumberjack in the Yukon or wherever he is, and it ends Soprano style going to black, and you're just left to your own devices, that feeling, that moment watching the series finale of Dexter after putting so much time and investment into a show that I know was a sunk cost, that I know would not get better, but I just had to know. But then mercifully, it was over. That is how I felt watching Game 7 and at the end of Game 7. The one takeaway, honestly, Wish, that I will take from watching the Leafs this year is that it feels like it's over. It feels like this chapter is done. This chapter of Leafs futility has been written. It feels like it will be. I'm not saying the Leafs will not find other ways to be futile. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is this era of futility feels final. It feels like we are entering a new era. Obviously, with the UFAs like John Tavares and Mitch Marner, that's going to be the case. But I do feel like, mercifully, this core four era, this was the last the last words of the chapter.
Yeah, this, and see also the last season and a half of Battlestar Galactica. Matthews, listen, I'm always going to exonerate my boy, my sweet American champion. Like, he was obviously injured. We're going to find out how badly and go from there. I keep him. I keep Nylander. Bye Marner. Bye Riley. Goodbye Tavares. A regrettable signing now in every way. I know he's got a heart and soul player in Toronto, but you know what? You could have definitely utilized that money in some new and exciting ways that didn't involve paying John Tavares. Here's the thing, though. I hope the Leafs hear you, and I hope the Leafs hear me, because I'm concerned they might have heard Paul Maurice and Brad Marchand last night and taken those words to heart. Paul Maurice talking about the team gets too much criticism, talking about the pressure, talking about this is the best version of the Leafs that we've seen. You know, and Brad Marchand putting over the Leafs. They're going to get crucified unjustly because of how good they played in these playoffs in this series. Hear me now. These are your enemies. They want you to keep the team together. They just beat the living crap out of them every time they play them in the playoffs. Why would they want things to change? Don't listen to these liars. It's like Beelzebub over there. Don't listen to his lies. He's trying to keep the team together so he can beat them again.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to Steve Dangle, who, in response to Brad Marchand, said, yes, this is like the wolf saying, no, we don't need to go to brick houses. Straw houses are just fine. What about this brick house? No, we don't need to do that. All right, speaking of Brad Marchand, winners and losers, as we bring you the draw presented by Xfinity, Brad Marchand is a winner. He's a Leaf killer. Back at it again, 5-0 in Game 7s against the Leafs. He caps off the game with an empty netter, 37 career playoff points against the Maple Leafs, second all-time in playoff points by any player against the Leafs in their history, trailing only, Gordie Howe, who had 53 against the Buds. Brad Marchand has cemented himself over and over again as the Leafs killer when it matters the most, and he gets the job done again.
Loser, the Leafs. If it was a Game 7, that means the Leafs are losing. This chapter of futility has finally gone on for far too long. The Leafs have now lost 7 straight Game 7s and have scored only 1 goal each in the last 4. We had jerseys hit the ice. We had a beer, unfortunately, hit the Leafs bench. Booze rained down as they left the ice at the end. Drake makes a terrible bet. It's all there. It's a terrible, terrible time to be a Leafs fan.
Oh, and by the way, I love that Drake called it the Bieber curse on Instagram after the game. No, it's not your own curse betting $1 million on the team. No, no, no. Let's have the Toronto celebrities duking it out now. That was funny. Winner, Stars fans, this was actually a very heartfelt moment. To get serious for a second here, Stars fans rallied online, on Reddit, on social media upon hearing of the passing of Mark Scheifele's father. They decided that they would donate each $55, which is Mark Scheifele's jersey number, to charities he supports, including the Jets Youth Foundation. Elliot Friedman reported that over $50,000 was raised in less than 24 hours. Another great reason why hockey fans are the absolute best. So we want to throw flowers to the Dallas Stars fans for mobilizing like this, and good vibes and acts of kindness.
Let's get unserious again. Loser Katy Perry. Katy Perry's The Lifetimes Tour, which in no way is the Eras Tour, was scheduled for Wednesday, May 21st at the American Airlines Center in Dallas. Dallas, home of the Dallas Stars, who of course were playing game 1 of the Western Conference Final against Edmonton on that very date. According to Dallas Stars president Brad Alberts, the Perry concert has been moved to Thursday, May 22nd. So despite Connor McDavid never having been to space, Arda, he's still more important than Katy Perry.
Winner, back to Mark Scheifele. Real emotion. You can only imagine the emotional roller coaster that Mark Scheifele himself, just as a human being, was going through in the last 24 hours. He had to talk, obviously, as a public figure, as an athlete, he has to talk about the loss of his father, which happened in the previous 24 hours, deciding that he's still going to suit up and play in this pivotal elimination game. He's going to do it for his family. He's going to do it to honor his father, who would have wanted him to play the game. He scores the first goal of the game. He plays his heart out in the game. He takes the penalty that ultimately leads to the series-winning goal. And that shot, I don't think I'll ever forget it, Wish, of him with his head down in the penalty box after the Dallas Stars, Thomas Harley, scores the goal. It's just, and then of course the outpouring of emotion from the Dallas Stars players during the handshake line, showing that love to Mark Scheifele, because obviously life, supersedes anything that would ever happen on the ice. So it was just highs and lows, man. It was quite fascinating to see.
We've talked about this before on the show, just the ability of these guys to compartmentalize grief, anguish, depression, all these emotions. They're able to kind of just like put it in a little bucket for a little bit, right, while they play. Mm-hmm. He's a better man than me. I don't know if I could have brought myself together to be even strapping on the skates for that game after what happened that afternoon. Loser, we'll stay on the Jets. Connor Hellebuck in the playoffs. Here's his home versus road splits. 0-6, 5.06 goals against, 809 save percentage on the road. 6-1 with a 1.73 goals against and a 916 save percentage at home. These are two entirely different players. The question is, did he do enough in Game 7, stopping 18 of 20 shots to calm down the fears maybe of Team USA management as they watch Jake Ottinger skate on to the conference final with some stellar play, whilst Connor Hellebuck, well, he got pulled 3 times against St. Louis. Don't forget about that. And then did not play well until that Game 7 on the road in Dallas.
I do want to. It does bear repeating, though. He did do well in the final of 4 Nations against Canada, so it's not like there are some positives to the negatives here.
Yeah. I mean, like, let's face it. When he has an all-star collection of American players in front of him, and not the Winnipeg Jets, the guy has played pretty well in goal, no matter where the games are held.
And by the way, that's exactly what he would have at the Olympics. So anyway, winner, Ottawa Charge fans, please recall that in the Professional Women's Hockey League playoffs, Montreal chose the 3rd place Charge rather than the 4th place Minnesota Frost as its opening round opponent. The Charge went on to upset Montreal with their fans chanting, "You picked us. You picked us." Love it.
I'm going to treat this as an outlier as far as my feelings about this gimmick, the you pick your opponent gimmick. But I will acknowledge the fact that Montreal's hubris in selecting Ottawa led to a very spicy playoff series with a extremely memorable result for what should be a burgeoning rivalry in that league. So kudos to the PWHL. I mean, many of your ideas, I think the NHL should adopt. This is one that perhaps I'll have to be more open-minded about, because it really did work perfectly in the playoffs.
Yeah, there's some great ideas. Jailbreak, I think, is a fantastic idea. Hopefully we see that in the NHL at some point in the near future. That was winners and losers. How about now we go to It's Booming, presented by Xfinity, and we're going to focus on key second round contributors. Who's booming? We got to look at Brad Marchand. And you got to give credit to Bill Zito, an elite trade deadline, picking up Brad Marchand, picking up Seth Jones as well. But Marchand is showing out these playoffs. 10 career points in Game 7s, passes Ovechkin for most among active players, tying him with Paul Stastny and Yari Curry for 10th place on the all-time list. But it's just incredible, Wish, that when you look at the top performers for the Florida Panthers, you could even say in the latter half of the series, but certainly Game 7, you're pointing to Seth Jones and Brad Marchand.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they've got that third line going right now, and it was such a driver of offense in a Game 7 is kind of a scary thought. They're a very scary, deep team. We'll talk about that in a bit. Booming. Freddie Anderson of the Carolina Hurricanes. Oh, so this is what happens when Freddie Anderson is healthy. He proves he is one of the best goalies in the league when he's on the ice. He's proving it in these playoffs, 7-2 with a 1.36 goals against average and a 937 save percentage. He has been absolutely fantastic. Look, the team in front of him is a suffocating group of players. But when stuff does get through the Carolina Hurricanes defense, he is there to clean it all up. And it should make for a pretty interesting conference final up against Sergei Bobrovsky.
Boomin, Jacob Slavin. It was almost a coming out party for him, not for Canes fans, but for sports fans in general, for him at Four Nations, how incredible he played there. But guess what? Back-to-back for the Hurricanes, deservedly so. They dismantled the Capitals in 5 games. Slavin is one of the biggest factors at the end of the series. Capitals coach Spencer Carberry had some high praise for Slavin. He said, how's he not in the Norris Trophy conversation every single year? It just doesn't seem right. Maybe because he's not leading defenseman in points, but as it pertains to the role to shut down offenses, to make sure that they get out of their own zone and they keep it tidy in front of their goaltender, Jacob Slavin, one of the best.
He opened his press conference talking about Jacob Slavin. I was in the room. I'm like, oh, don't you want to talk about Ovechkin's future or what happened this season? He's just like, I got to get this thing off about Jacob Slavin off my chest. But hey, well deserving. Slavin's awesome. Boomin'. Connor McDavid, he is over and over again proving that he's a generational talent. 14 assists so far in the playoffs, which lead the league. He's only 2 points behind Mikko Rantanen for the playoff point lead. Obviously, a lot of eyes will be on that series as he who ultimately could take the Conn Smythe. We are so blessed to be watching McJesus do his thing in the playoffs. And obviously, of the narrative plot lines for the Final Four teams, none are stronger than, is it time for Connor to finally lift the cup that he nearly lifted last season after a miraculous comeback in the Stanley Cup final?
One goal stood in the way of the reverse sweep last season for the Edmonton Oilers. Boomin, Pete DeBoer, he's now made the Western Conference final in 6 of his last 7 seasons as a coach. San Jose, 2 with Vegas, 3 straight with Dallas. But Wish, is this the year for Pete?
I don't want to spoil what's coming up later, but I do think that he has got himself a team that has played through some extraordinarily tough opponents in the Central Division, a team that is extremely well put together, a team that is getting healthy at the right time, and a team, much like Edmonton, that has some players with the insatiable hunger to lift the cup for the first time. This could be the year for Pete.
And that will be it for It's Booming, presented by Xfinity. So before we go to our conference final preview, talking about the 2 remaining series, the Dallas Stars had a special guest in their locker room after they closed out the series. And it's a guy that led their opponents to several Stanley Cups back in the 80s, creating a dynasty. Hear from the great one.
Congratulations, the greatest game in the world, and you're going to go up against one of the greatest teams ever, Edmonton. I wish you good luck. It was so much fun watching you guys play today. You guys play hard, you play physical, and you play fair, and you guys should be so proud And Winnipeg was so good, and I'm so proud of Mark Scheifele, his dad passing. I know all you guys all care about each other. What a wonderful night for him as far as he played his heart out. So congratulations, and now we got Edmonton, Dallas.
Don't put him on the spot.
Yeah, don't put him on the spot. Don't make him pick the
Hey.
team he played for.
Congratulations to the Dallas Stars for meeting Gretzky's appearance fee for Game 7. That's impressive. That's
Yeah,
a
very much so. That's not cheap.
Healthy investment.
It's not cheap. Not cheap. All right, so the stage is set. 2 conference finalists. Let's dig a little deeper into these matchups. In the East, the Panthers are taking on the Carolina Hurricanes. In the West, the Oilers taking on the Stars. All right, so the Oilers and the Stars, they're running it back. We just mentioned the Dallas Stars, 3 straight conference final appearances. They did make the Stanley Cup final in 2020. It's been a while, but the Oilers were in the Stanley Cup final last year. They dispatched the Stars last season. But the Stars now have Mikko Rantanen. The Stars now have an offensive threat that has really unlocked in this postseason. But when you look at this series, how it might differ from last season, Wish, what comes to mind?
Couple things. First off, I think the evolution of Thomas Harley, who you mentioned before as a defenseman, has been such a real key. He gets so many reps in so many big spots with Miro Heiskanen out of the lineup. And then Miro comes back. Harley's now schooled and ready to be a vital. I think every great team, every championship team has the same kind of blueprint, right? It's like you need 2 good centers, helps if one is a star. You need to get yourself a goalie that's not going to lose you a series. And then you usually need to go about 2 deep defensively. Most teams that have won the Cup have. The exception might have been the Capitals when they won with John Carlson. But like Shea Theodore and Alex Pietrangelo and Parayko, Hedman and McDonough, the list goes on. And I think they have that now with Harley and Miro. So that's the Dallas part of it. That's kind of interesting. The Edmonton part of it is that they have certainly found another gear defensively in these playoffs, man. They played like this at times last season, but I was absolutely blown away by how they played defensively against Vegas, completely keeping their top players in check, creating offense off of defense. And then on top of that, the other really impressive thing, Arda, about Edmonton is they haven't needed to be the Connor and Leon show. They're getting contributions offensively throughout the lineup. And that's a really scary proposition if you're the Dallas Stars, because all of a sudden it's not so much, hey, how do we handle Connor and Leon? It's how do we handle Connor and Leon and Evander Kane and Adam Henrique and all these other guys that have been chipping in offensively. The Oilers are peaking at the right time.
Pete DeBoer, Chris Knobloch, coaching battle. Who has the edge?
I think Peter DeBoer does. Based on experience alone, and if God forbid the series goes 7, the man knows his way around a Game 7 as well. I like what Pete does adjustment wise. He's not someone who is going to be married to his pairings or his lines. He plays the playoff game really well insofar as sharing information when necessary. It wouldn't surprise me to see a little bit of line salad from the Stars. I mean, we talked about Rantanen. He wasn't nearly as dominant as he had been in for the last 2 games against the Winnipeg Jets. So we'll see what they come at the Oilers with. But I mean, listen, the track record, as you mentioned before, for DeBoer is way too impressive to take Knobloch over him.
It's funny. We always talk about 9-0 in Game 7s, and then you look at his Game 6 record, and it's like 6-15 or something like that. Now,
right.
I'm not disparaging Pete DeBoer, okay? Like this reminds me of when we talk about, this guy's the winningest coach in NBA history, and then you look at the loss column, and you're like, oh yeah, he's also the losingest coach because he's just coached the most. It's like not every season's going to be a big season.
Do not look at Marty Berdore's loss totals as a Hall of Fame goaltender.
Exactly. Predictions for this series.
I'm taking Dallas in 7. I mean, Dallas was my cup pick. I'm proud to say that of all of the NHL experts who made picks before the playoffs, only myself and Hockey Hall of Famer Mark Messier still have our teams alive. I took the Stars. He took the Oilers. May the best man win. I just think Jake Ottinger, who we probably haven't talked enough about on this show, is locked in. He's playing fantastic. That is a clear advantage over what Edmonton brings to the table, even though both Skinner and Pickard, when he was healthy, have played well. Ottinger is the kind of goalie that can win a series or at least a game in a series on his own. But I just think, defensively they're playing well. Their home ice advantage is a real critical key in this series. And Dallas's depth has impressed me along the way. Look, no disrespect to the Oilers, but the Dallas Stars got through the Colorado friggin' Avalanche and then the President's Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets in their first 2 rounds. If you can get through that, and did so for the most part without their top defenseman and second leading scorer against Colorado and during a good portion of the Winnipeg series, that's really impressive.
Yeah, it would certainly be impressive to see the Dallas Stars continue that. All right, Eastern Conference.
Hold on. What's your pick, buddy?
Oh, I'll go Oilers in 7 just because I want to see Pete DeBoer lose in Game 7. That's a really mean reason, isn't it? That's really mean. That's
no.
Just
well, hey, listen.
I just think the Oilers could get it done.
If you asked every player that ever played for Pete DeBoer and told them your rationale, they'd be like, "That checks." Yep. No, that's fine.
Eastern Conference, Panthers, Hurricanes. We got another fun coaching battle here with Rod Brind'Amour and Paul Maurice. Why don't we start there? Who has the edge?
I just, it's funny. When Paul Maurice got hired by the Florida Panthers, I was like, retread city, what are we doing? This guy, he has blown me away with how he's coached this team over the last few seasons. I mean, he's crafty, he's clever. The adjustments that he made in Game 7, I mean, we didn't talk enough about that when we were talking about the Leafs before, but like the way that the Panthers were collapsing players against the wall when the Leafs were trying to clear the zone and smartly deflecting pucks. I mean, that is the kind of adjustment Paul Maurice makes in key situations when things aren't working well. No disrespect to Rod Brind'Amour, who is probably Taylor Hall said it to me the other day. Like, he's the guy you want to play for. Taylor Hall re-signed in Carolina to learn more from Rod Brind'Amour, which is a hell of an endorsement. I just think Maurice is one of the better postseason coaches we've had in recent memory.
All right, so the Panthers are the reigning Cup champs. The Carolina Hurricanes just haven't been able to make it to the dance under the Rod Brind'Amour, in the Rod Brind'Amour era. Could this year be different? What's your outlook on this series?
All right, so I put a lot of brain power last night, maybe a couple glasses of brown stuff, into thinking about the Carolina Hurricanes and trying to figure a way that the Hurricanes could beat the Panthers. So here are the two things I think the Hurricanes rather have in favor. When Florida swept them a couple of years ago, the Hurricanes did not have Andrei Svechnikov. And we talk about the Hurricanes every single season as being that team that needs to find that goal in a critical time. And, oh, look, Svechnikov found that goal against the Washington Capitals in their clincher. And so with Svech healthy, playing well, that could be a real X factor because he was not there when Carolina lost a series of 1-goal games to the Panthers. The other X factor for me is home ice. The Hurricanes have been insane in Raleigh. 5-0, 420, 4.20. Hello. Goals for per game, 1.6 goals against per game on average. Freddie's played great. And they've got home ice in the series. So, like, from those two aspects, you have a little hope. But I'm taking Panthers in 6. I cannot believe how good they look. I cannot believe how deep they are. I cannot believe how, as you mentioned before, smart Bill Zito was in finding a way to get Marchand there and finding a way to get Seth Jones there. Seth Jones had maybe his best playoff game against the Leafs in Game 7. Bob is locked in. He's not allowing anything. And the most important thing for me in this series, Arda, Carolina's real talent is suffocating the opponent, frustrating them, not giving them the puck, smothering them, taking over the game, playing to their tempo. You know who will not be bothered by that at all? The Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers take what you give them, and then they maximize the opportunities. I think they are built to beat a team like Carolina, and I think they will do it in 6.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Florida Panthers close out this series as well. I'm going to go a different route for our last question of this block here. Which team, maybe from the fan perspective, the hockey gods, the juju, the all is right with the world kind of paradigm here, which team, in your opinion, deserves to win the Stanley Cup this year?
It's a great question. I mean, I think Connor and Leon, we all want to see them raise the cup to take away the question that would have dogged players like Alex Ovechkin had they not won, or Nathan McKinnon had they not won. So that's one level of it. But if you're talking about totality of team, I got to go with the Carolina Hurricanes. A Stanley Cup would validate Rod Brindamore as one of the best coaches we've ever seen. A Stanley Cup would be wonderful to see in the hands of a Brent Burns, wonderful to see in the hands of a Taylor Hall, wonderful to see in the hands of a Freddie Anderson, who emerged from the cesspool of Toronto to then play with the Hurricanes and play well. But there's so many other guys in this team. They've been bubbling under the surface. They've been conference final bridesmaids multiple times. And of course, if they were to win the cup, Arda, the absolute irony of winning it without Jake Gensel, who they traded for to get that one goal they needed, the irony of winning it without Mikko Rantanen, potentially beating Mikko Rantanen for the cup and not having him on the roster to give that one goal they needed, to do it with the players they already have on the roster would be ironic, but also in the pantheon of hockey god wisdom might be the way they ultimately go.
That would be quite the story if Mikko Rantanen had one of the best postseasons in recent memory leading up to the Cup final, and he gets shut down by the Carolina Hurricanes en route to winning a Stanley Cup after having such an awful tenure, a short tenure with them. That would be a tantalizing storyline, and Hurricanes fans would eat that up. The only thing I want to say here, I agree with everything you're saying. As a team, the Carolina Hurricanes, I would agree, deserve to win the Stanley Cup the most. I have said this before and I'll say it again. The sport of hockey, without a shadow of a doubt, absolutely needs the image of Connor McDavid raising a Stanley Cup. That needs to happen. I'm not saying it needs to happen in an Edmonton Oilers jersey. It just needs to happen. Connor McDavid's face, arms raised, Stanley Cup being held. That needs to happen before it's all said and done. It's just too important for hockey. It's too important for sports. It needs to be documented, and it needs to be put in the archives for posterity. It needs to be hung up at the Smithsonian and the Louvre. Just has to happen. So I don't know how often we're going to see Connor McDavid at this stage in the playoffs. Hopefully many, many years to come. But for somebody that is like, well, we're this close, we might as well just go the entire way. Let's just see him win the Stanley Cup. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, clearly what we're saying here is that neither of us are putting much import on a Florida Panthers dynasty as being the thing we need to see. And by the way, the Dallas Stars also have their share of old guys without a cup. Jamie Benn, players like that. Tons of guys in that team are deserving of winning as well. And it would be, I mean, you talk about the Mikko Rantanen revenge tour. There's another side of that coin, which is that he beats Colorado in the first round, then beats Carolina in the final to win the cup. And I mean, that would be like, you'd have to go to the top of the Empire State Building to drop the mic for how severe the mic drop would be if Mikko Rantanen did that to win the cup.
That's a very, very good point. All right, that's going to do it for us here on The Drop, presented by Xfinity. The Wi-Fi is booming. Big shout out to our producer, Justin, on this episode, carrying a giant rock like Homer Simpson up the mountain on his back for this one. Appreciate you, buddy. We love you. And I want to tell everybody that we do have more shows coming throughout the remainder of the playoffs, including the Stanley Cup final. That's going to be a lot of fun. Last year, some of our best episodes really were post-game after Cup final games. No official announcement just yet, but I just wanted to throw a little bit of garnish, a little bit of salt on the appetizer here, that perhaps an announcement will be coming at some point about the Drop's immediate future plans, which is going to be very exciting.
Your boys going on the road. I'm heading to Raleigh. I'm doing the Eastern Conference Final for ESPN. So we might be seeing each other from a random arena in the East. And then we'll see I cannot help but acknowledge as I hit the road again for the next two rounds that Edmonton, Florida remains on the table. And I swear to God that travel took at least 3 years off my life last year. So all right, I'm just thinking about connecting flights and do I get the connecting flight in Winnipeg? Like it's just I'm not dreading it, Arda. I'm just thinking about it intensely.
Let's set the record again. The longest distance between Cup final teams. Let's do it, folks. Just for Wish. Do it for Wish, okay? Because his travel last year was like watching Dexter. He had to do it, okay? And he just couldn't stop no matter what.
I nearly became Dexter by the end of that travel series.
You had these little slides that you were keeping. Anyway. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching The Drop presented by Xfinity. The Wi-Fi is booming. We will catch you next time. Take care.